now stood in the way of total Nazi domination of Europe. Back in the Berghof, Hitler's private Alpine retreat near Berchtesgaden, the Führer was jubilant. The small resistance movement in the Wehrmacht was demoralized.
They could see the regime for what it was, but it was very difficult for them to act without trying to sell something to the public. And while Hitler was marching from success to success on the battlefield, it was very, very difficult for them to do that.
Hitler now began to plot against the Soviet Union. The military leadership had strong misgivings, but Hitler's recent victories gave him an aura of invincibility. Fall Barbarossa, the invasion of the USSR, was launched on June 22nd. But Hitler made the mistake of parceling his forces out over 3 different thrusts. One toward the north and Leningrad, one toward the south and the oil fields of the Caucasus, and one much reduced central thrust towards Moscow. After initial successes, the Russian invasion soon faltered at the onset of winter. The central thrust petered out with the spires of Moscow in view. Morale plunged. Brauchitsch resigned. Rather than replace him, Hitler assumed personal control of all military operations in the East. On December 7, 1941, Japanese forces attacked Pearl Harbor.
A date which will live in infamy.
Overnight, the United States became a major combatant in the war. The spirit of the resistance in the German Wehrmacht soared. Beck began to seek out new members of the opposition force.
People like Beck realized Germany's only chance was to try and attain some kind of peace with the West and then hopefully stem the tide in the East.
One of the officers approached by Beck was General Olbricht, chief of the Army General Services Office and adjutant to General Fromm, the commander of the Reserve Army, with offices at the Bendlerstrasse in Berlin. Also in Berlin was a young officer serving on the general staff of the German High Command, named Klaus Schenk, Count von Stauffenberg. The von Stauffenberg family was one of the oldest and most distinguished aristocratic families of southern Germany. Both Klaus's father, Alfred, and his mother, Caroline, were aristocrats of high rank.
There were many small kingdoms and principalities in Germany at the time, and his father was the Lord Chamberlain of the King of Württemberg, and his mother was a lady-in-waiting to Queen Charlotte of Württemberg.
Caroline had already presented her husband with 2 sons, the twins Berthold and Alexander. In November of 1907, when she was 8 months into her next pregnancy, she decided to travel to Stauffenberg Castle in Jettingen.
Seine Mutter hat ihre Schwiegermutter hier besucht und dabei kam dann Klaus eben auf die Welt und ein Bruder von ihm, Konrad, es waren auch Zwillinge, genau wie die ersten Brüder von ihm waren ja auch Zwillinge.
Konrad died shortly after birth, but Klaus survived. For the next 10 years, the 3 sons grew up in the privileged comfort of the German nobility under Kaiser Wilhelm II.
So he grew up as a young fellow in this royal atmosphere, and they had a small family castle of their own in Lautlingen, so he was born and raised in a very aristocratic atmosphere.
But young Klaus was a sickly child. He had few friends, but developed a close bond with his elder brother Berthold. In 1914, war broke out, and Germany declared war on both France and Russia. Caroline made a point of taking tea to the soldiers passing through the local train station, and in the summer urged her sons to help the local women, now deprived of their menfolk, with the harvest. The boys were tutored at the estate, and later attended school in Stuttgart. In his spare time, Klaus read and learned to play the cello, so that he and his brothers could perform trio sonatas by Mozart and Haydn. One day, they learned that Germany had requested an armistice. Klaus was in tears.
And he was, of course, still a boy when that war ended, in Germany's defeat and in the national, what was so seen by so many people, including Stauffenberg's family, as the national humiliation of the Treaty of Versailles in 1919.
Germany was in a state of siege, as various mobs, communist or right-wing, jockeyed for power. The political upheaval of those years made a powerful impression on Klaus. He resolved to become an officer, for he believed that the officer corps had always served as a powerful stabilizing force in German life. In 1926, he joined the family's traditional regiment, the 17th Cavalry Regiment in Bamberg.
And then Stauffenberg voluntarily joined another circle, that of poet Stefan George, who formed quite an elitist circle of his own, the so-called Geheimes Deutschland, or Secret Germany.
And there the notion was of a Germany which would be led by a type of aesthetic elite, whose purpose it was to bring about a renewal of Germany from within.
Klaus enthusiastically embraced George's teachings. For him, the poet's circle embodied the hope that one day the secret Germany would rise and rebuild the fatherland as the proud monarchy it once was. Klaus had grown to be a tall and strikingly handsome young man, with a shock of dark hair, prominent cheekbones, a firm jaw, and dreamy, romantic eyes.
Ein sehr, sehr beeindruckender Mensch. Er hat eine ganz große Ausstrahlung gehabt. Er war irgendwie sehr, sehr herzlich, sehr auf jemanden zugehend.
A very devout Catholic, he always made sure to attend Mass on Sunday.
Irgendwo war eine Zeit lang in Bamberg stationiert beim Reiterregiment 17, wo er auch eingetreten ist. Und da lag ganz nah von Bamberg lag der Besitz meines Großvaters und war dann, sagen wir, ich war dann auch immer wieder eingeladen zu dem Winterball in Bamberg beim Regiment.
One day, he met a pretty young 16-year-old who was attending a local girls' boarding school by the name of Nina. Her actual name was Baroness Elisabeth von Lerchenfeld. In 1930, after he had been promoted to second lieutenant, Klaus proposed to Nina, even though he was only 23.
Und als sie sich dann entschlossen haben, sich offiziell zu verloben und zu heiraten, stieß es überhaupt nicht auf Begeisterung bei der Mutter meines Großvaters, weil man natürlich als Offizier überhaupt viel zu wenig verdient hat. Und die Mutter meines Großvaters, genannt Dolly, hat also versucht, ihrer Gegenschwieger das irgendwie auszureden. Das sei völlig unsinnig. Und dann hat aber die Mutter meiner Großmutter in den höchsten Tönen gesagt, aber sie haben sich schon geküsst.
Nina accepted his marriage proposal. even though the couple knew that army rules forbade him to marry until Klaus was either 27 or had completed 8 years of service. In 1923, Germany's Weimar Republic had been hit hard by rampant inflation. Money earned by a worker at the end of the week was often worthless by the time his wife tried to spend it at the shops. In the early 1930s, the global depression once again hit Germany's Weimar Republic.
Wir wollen nichts anderes als Friede, wollen nichts anderes als Ruhe, wollen nichts anderes.
The turmoil prepared the way for the rise of the dictatorship of Adolf Hitler. Stauffenberg found that the teachings of Stefan George had much in common with German National Socialism and supported Hitler's appointment as chancellor. Some said his reaction was enthusiastic.
He was one of those who, the general atmosphere amongst those circles in Germany was that they supported the Nazis in as far as the Nazis promised a sort of re-emergence of Germany, a renaissance for Germany on the world stage, and an end to the sort of humiliation that Germany had suffered at the end of the First World War.
Personally, I think that perhaps for some time this very esoteric circle of Stefan George may have blinded Stauffenberg for some time to the cruel realities of his country. Many other resistors, many people who later on became Stauffenberg's fellow conspirators, were aware of the evil of Hitler much earlier than Stauffenberg was.
On September 26, 1933, 8 months after Hitler became chancellor, Nina and Klaus were wed at St. James Church in Bamberg, having received special dispensation to marry early. He was in uniform and wore his steel helmet to the ceremony. To wed is to be on duty, he explained to Nina. The couple then took the train to Rome and honeymooned in the Eternal City before moving on to Verona and Florence. Toward the north and Leningrad, one toward the south and the oil fields of the Caucasus, and one much reduced central thrust towards Moscow. After initial successes, the Russian invasion soon faltered at the onset of winter. The central thrust petered out with the spires of Moscow in view and a plot against the Soviet Union. The military leadership had strong misgivings, but Hitler's recent victories gave him an aura of invincibility. England now stood in the way of total Nazi domination of Europe. Back in the Berghof, Hitler's private alpine retreat near Berchtesgaden, the Führer was jubilant. The small resistance movement in the Wehrmacht was demoralized.
They could see the regime for what it was, but it was very difficult for them to act without trying to sell something to the public. And while Hitler was marching from success to success on the battlefield, it was very, very difficult for them to do that.
Hitler now began. Fall Barbarossa, the invasion of the USSR, was launched on June 22nd. But Hitler made the mistake of parceling his forces out over 3 different thrusts. One toward